Maybe it'll just let me use their
All right
ID to
then,
do my own project.
welcome, day 20. We made it.
Oh, day
Here
20.
we go. Yeah. So, throughout the quarter, these are the major topics that we've talked about. And just to remind you of this, just because the final might include some of this. We talked about reshaping, creating parts by reshaping them. And talked about casting, forging, rolling, extrusion, and drawing were the major topics that we talked about. We talked about chip forming with milling, drilling, turning, grinding, sawing. Talked about the non-chip or non-traditional processes, chemical machining, electrochemical, electrodischarge, both wire and sinker for plunge, and electron beam, laser beam, and plasma arc machining. Talked about joining with welding, a little tiny bit with soldering and brazing, but mostly just about welding, and then talked about metrology at the beginning. So that's sort of the breadth of the topics that we talked about, which is a lot of topics. I wanted to remind you as you're thinking about the final and such, just wanted to remind you that on the Canvas page, if you go to pages, and then classroom and video PowerPoint slides, all of the slides for all of the videos and, or for all the videos and all the in-class and the Kahoots, mostly, there's one Kahoot missing, and then many of the in-class videos are there as well. So there's a lot of information there if you need it. This is the only resource that you can use on the final. So no pages of notes, none of your own notes, just these that are here. All right. So, yeah, just some big themes to think through as you are thinking about things. We begin with just the material properties, stress, strain, strength, toughness, hardness, ductility. We talked about how those properties affect processes and also how the processes affect the material properties. So that's a two-way street all the time. Every process helps determine every material property helps determine what process is feasible to use, and every process will affect the material properties in some way. We talked about the forces and energy required to do those processes, especially talking about things like the stress egg, and also about conservation of volume and how that affected us. So it changes some of the different processes as we go through. Talked about combined stresses with the stress egg, and we talked about heat, both good and bad, allowing us to reset things at different levels, but also causing tool wear and loss of strength, all kinds of things like that. Talked about the effects of friction, almost always bad in this class, good in other classes. So anyway, thinking about the final exam is due Tuesday, December 10th at 5 p.m. All right, 5 p.m. on Tuesday. You can work on it anytime after 6 a.m. tomorrow morning, and then anytime up until that. It's my intention that you're working on it somewhere in the 1.5 to 3 hours area. I think it's easily doable in that amount of time. It's really designed to be a 2-hour test. If you have DAC accommodation, you can expand that number as the accommodation allows. When you submit it, it must be submitted in Word or PDF. Please do not submit it in Microsoft Pages, or I'm sorry, in Apple Pages if you are an Apple user. If you do that, I have to send it to some sketchy Chinese website to get it converted to something that I can read. And who knows, they're probably pulling all your data and your credit card number and the names of your children. And Who knows what else there is?
Not much.
Who knows what else, there's an amazing amount of data in there. Anyway, so please submit it in Word or PDF format. It helps me out a huge amount if you can type it. If you absolutely cannot type and think like you need to write it out by hand, that's okay, but make sure it's legible. It takes me about 4 times as long to grade it. Some of what you think is legible is, you know, especially in a pressure situation, it becomes less legible, I understand. So anyway, for all your writing, try to proofread it, make sure that you're saying things that make sense. In a test, you know, I understand that you're under pressure, you're writing through it, you're trying to get things done, you have a limited amount of time. And so I understand that there are gonna be things that don't quite go together, but anyway, try to look at it a little bit towards that. There is a statement that is at the top of the test. It looks exactly like, well, not exactly like, but very much like this. It is highlighted in yellow, and you need to copy it and paste it onto your exam, and then type your full name at the end saying that you agree with it. So it is just saying the only resource that you may use is a class Canvas site. So it's saying that you have answered everything yourself, haven't talked to other students about it, haven't used any AI or other assistants outside of those standard ones that are in Word. So you're welcome to use grammar checker and spell check in Word. That's great. Yes?
Are we allowed to look up like tips on how to make a haiku?
Beforehand you can, sure. So before the test, yeah, look up haiku if you want to look up haiku, if that's your preferred path. Just studying like you would study otherwise, right? You can look up how to do a haiku. You can also look at your notes and such. Yes?
Is like the spell check in Google Docs acceptable? It's like I use Google
Yeah,
Docs.
yeah, Google Docs spell check is fine too, yep. Just don't go down the road of the AI that is available through Google Docs, right? So don't have it go through and rewrite your whole thing for you or write haiku for you, because I would imagine it's probably pretty good at it. So for both options, you're gonna do paragraphs 1 and 2, and that is 1 to 1.5 pages. And then if you do option A, you will do 3 haiku, 1 about welding, 1 about the non-traditional or non-chip forming processes, and 1 about metal manufacturing, all right? You can write plastics manufacturing haiku somewhere else. Yes?
For the for all of them really, is it gonna be like pick one specific like process and then do a haiku about it, or is it about all non-traditional processes?
You can do it however you want. This is all the guidance you get. 1 about welding, 1 about non-trad, 1 about metal manufacturing.
So like if it was non-traditional and I chose to only do like plasma or cutting,
that would be great. Yeah, that's probably the easiest to do, but if you want to do the whole category and you do a good job of it, that's fine too. Yeah. Option B, you're going to have 2 additional paragraphs, 1 about welding and 1 about non-traditional, so there are questions to answer about that, and it is about 1-ish pages of text, or 1 page of text-ish. I don't know which way to go with that, but anyway. Any questions about that? Yes?
So is the test in the format of like a quiz with like a time limit, or is it just like an assignment, we just answer the questions in Word or whatever?
It is just an assignment. You're gonna make your own Word doc and enter the things in. It is not timed. It doesn't, time out after 2 hours or anything. That causes a lot of problems with technology going awry. So you're just gonna write it, you're gonna upload it. It will it will check it to make sure that you didn't copy it from somewhere, or to try to make sure that you didn't copy it from somewhere, and it will give you a report, I guess. Anyway, and you have until Tuesday at 5 p.m. to upload it. Any other questions? All right, it's gonna be fun. You're gonna love it.
Super.
And now, the world famous manufacturing challenge. And just to remind you, world famous means that somebody somewhere in the world has knowledge of the test. So, it's kind of a, no, it's not a test, it's a challenge. All right, so this is the engineering challenge. For this, you may not use the interwebs, your notes, or other resources. You're working in teams of 2 or 3 to do this. And we will go over answers at the end, and you can total your scores when we get there, and we'll see who is the best-ish.
Ish.
All right, are you a team?
Yes. We're us for, yeah.
Oh my god, is it a
Are you all a team?
It feels like it's a pop.
Okay.
Well, this is not as fun as I thought.
This is not a fun challenge.
2 teams?
Oh god.
It literally is a pop quiz. But
Oh my god, oh my god. Oh my god. Oh, Central, Central. This is good.
If it would be helpful to have an extra copy to read, I have extras, but you only need to fill one out.
we have an extra. Why would you do that? Put them right above each other. I was back in.
Because if I, oh,
Do we
yes,
write this all?
right.
No,
Yeah, just write it somewhere on the paper, yeah. You don't have to fit it in little tiny spaces.
okay.